Welcome to the Rita meeting. Rita is not here yet. I think we can wait a little bit, but I don't think she's going to show up. Um, Rita's comments were back here.
We read them.
Okay, that's where we were heading for, right? You can see this on the screen though.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said we're going to have this video, and she said no. And she said she's going to publish her information, right? The reason she asked for a face-to-face exchange is because she's had a personal experience with manipulating information, but basically if she would have shared it on this screen, there's no manipulation. She's the one sharing it. So I think it's a little ironic and very creepy, in my opinion, that she wanted to do this little drop at a video there, but we'll see. Okay, so let's go through this anyway since she's not here. My original agenda was to go over an open discussion related to the need to agree to the position that we need information prior to making a decision. I think that's common sense. Does anybody have anything related to not allowing certain information or information to be shared in a public meeting? Could you think of anything that should not be shared in a public meeting of your elected public servants? Does anybody have anything that you would think that would not be allowed to be seen by you, that's seen by a board of director prior to making an informed decision? Terry, is there anything you think that should be not shown to the public?
Private student information. I
We don't
agree
get
with that part.
Yeah, I agree. We agree with that. We don't get any of that information. Usually it's student numbers and the like, if it's even shared at all, and or staff numbers. So on that we both agree. Anything else that you think that would not be able to be seen? Any bills, any payment of benefits, any payments to the solicitor, anything
No,
at all?
that should all be shared with you.
Okay, I tend to agree. So we can skip ahead. I don't think anyone would argue with that. My next couple minutes was to let Rita go first and state her position and share any evidence she has. She has not compiled it yet, even. When she responded back, she had mentioned that those documents were not even available yet, right? Hold on a second. Once those documents are exchanged, so apparently she doesn't even have these documents yet. So let's just skip ahead and we'll go to my discussion of neglect of Pennsylvania school code. So the first challenge we had was this idea on the sale of property, right? So they denied this as a conclusion of law. So if we read the law, 707, it says sale of property, which Barb has already articulated greatly, is the fact that they had to advertise it not only locally, but they also had to advertise it within the law journal. Barb did a request for that law journal, right? Looking for the information. Here's her request, right? And the results of that request were published here. From the district. And in that publishment of the request, so first of all, one of the things I found amazing when Barb did that right to know, which is great to have the right to know opportunity, is that these things were put on a bulletin board, but this is what they put on the bulletin board. I mean, it's tiny. I don't even see how anybody could read this. Here it is, inside the bulletin board. That was their notice. To me, that's ridiculous. Would you agree or disagree?
Agree, but it was done
Agree.
on purpose.
Say it again. You
I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's the notice that they're giving to sell a hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets, and this is the best picture that they were able to give on a right to know request, to me that's a little bit less than disingenuous if that's what they're going to consider to write that notice and put it on a bulletin board, right? So let's go to the next set of plaintiff's exhibits, right? So this is the minutes. We're going to go to page, six and 7. So on page 6 and 7 of the school board minutes and this policy meeting, right? This is a workshop committee meeting. Go down to page 6 and 7. Here it is that they're talking about that motion that they passed. That obviously, in my opinion, again, that the terms and conditions of sales will be set forth. Notice of said sale shall be published. No, I'm sorry, let me speak a little easier. Notice of said sale shall be published once a week during 3 weeks prior to the sale. So that's great that they decided to put it in the Times News, but Pennsylvania School Code is very specific in the need to publish it at the Carbon County Law Journal, the official record, right? And what happens when you do that is there's a lot of people that ping those law journal entries so that it'll basically be advertising to ensure that anyone throughout the country that's pinging these law journals, knowing that that's where these things have to be advertised, would then be invited to the bid. Right? And that's the concern I have with the fact that they didn't do it. And I think it's the same concern that Barb had. This is the Sherry, you can see this on the screen again.
Yeah.
So it says it has to do a legal newspaper. So they knew that. So they must have, at some point, they must have looked at this code, looking at the sale of unused property, and saw that it needed to be advertised in a one or more newspapers of general circulation. But it also says, and in the legal newspaper of said county. So the fact that in this motion that was passed by the board, it was not advertised properly is pretty much an admission that it needed to be done and that they did not do that. So that would be a neglect, in my opinion, of this 707 requirement on the sale of property. Can everybody see that the motion fails to add that information in? Is there any discrepancy that they have failed to add this part of the school code into the motion meeting that requirement?
It says that they're going to publish it for 3 weeks. It just doesn't state where in the motion.
Well, they published it for these days, right? Sold at a public auction, notes, one or more newspapers in general circulation.
Right. And that's what I got proof that they did. And
Correct.
they put up
but it only shows that they published it in the bulletin board, right? And again,
didn't it have where they published
handbills. Here's the handbills that they had, one or
right.
more of which must be posted on the property, and at least 5 of which must be posted at conspicuous places within the vicinity of said real estate. So when you did your right to know, in my opinion, and they gave you this response of the right to know, which is here is the notice they put in conspicuous locations, and here they are proving that these are the locations that they put them in. Right? The notice locations. So they
right.
must have read this Pennsylvania school code knowing that this needed to be done. Why they neglected, keyword is neglected, to do the legal newspaper in the county, to me, is them not meeting the school code, neglecting their duty to meet the school code, and therefore not advertising these properties properly. And that's what we want the judge to decide, of whether or not these postings was good enough to do the job. And that's our bone of contention. And to have this as the notice is insulting, to say the least. I mean, it looks like Dorothy Ebert has a bigger advertisement, right, for her charity event than we did to sell a school. So let's keep moving along. That's number one, is the sale of these properties. And it goes on. So when we look at the appraisals, which we also placed inside of our evidence, it shows that the elementary school, this one happens to be the Franklin one, was for $759,000. So we didn't even get close to the appraisal dollar value. At that point, a business person would typically realize that, hey, we're going to have a base of the bid, at least fair value, and fair value would be denoted in this expensive and time-consuming appraisal that was done. So you would not sell it, and you'd wait until either A, you advertised it better, or B, found another person. That's an opinion. They're allowed to sell it for less if they so desire, but the reality is, by not advertising, of course they're not going to get full value for that property, right? Now, in the newspaper, our other evidence here that talks about that this church is moving, right? And here they say they bought it for $415,000, which is way less than not only the appraisal value, but it was the only bidder to arrive. So a sale to one person is not a real sale, in my opinion, as well. Normally, you need at least
Dave,
one person.
I need to correct you on that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Thank you.
They paid $415,000 because they were bid against.
Okay. So we had two bidders.
Well, BHA bid first, and they bid. Oh no, I'm sorry. You're talking about the other one.
This is about Franklin, yeah.
Yeah, there was another bidder on that. That's why they paid $415,000, because the floor bid was $400,000.
Okay. So if they bid, hey, good evening, Wally. So we're going through some of the evidence, Wally, of the fact that they did not bid these. I'm sorry, they did not advertise these properties accurately, to catch up to speed, Wally. And then we're looking at the fact that they literally only had two bidders arrive at this property. And whereas the appraisal for that property shows that the property had a value of $759,000, a governing board normally would have postponed the bid until such time that they had a bid of commensurate value, at least in the 700 range, not something in the $400,000 range.
A good board would not have accepted a floor bid of $400,000.
Correct. They would have put a minimum on the bid. And I think we all agree with that the value of these schools was greatly under the appraised value. So now in this minutes of this board meeting, sorry, I'm going to grab one more evidence piece here. And we're looking at page 1718. So I scroll down here to 1718. There we go. And there's them voting on this, on the motion, right? To accept this bid, which we all accepted, right? Joy was absent. Now, according to this court case, which we referenced, and I'll find it in here. It requires, right, the duty of a school director member. Let me highlight this for a second. The duty of a school board member, a commissioner, councilman, or supervisor, is to be informed, right? So I don't believe that this board is acting in good faith when they're not acting with informed consent. And that's part of the argument. But the most critical phase is the fact that it's a requirement that they had to advertise it in the Carbon County Law Journal, and they did not. And I think that's just evidentiary. And then Barb was kind enough to provide each of the Carbon County Law Journal's entries, which we're also submitting as evidence, proving that it was not advertised. And that goes through this whole piece of evidence.
I did a right to know back on that for East Penn and Mahoning, and that's when they gave me like a
runaround
crappy answer.
So,
but I did that right to know back at the time where they claimed that they had them done.
Right. So now I found out that not only did they have them done, but they're referenced in meeting minutes, talking about not only that they had them done, but they actually saw these appraisals, right? And we can go down that in a little bit, but that not only they saw them, but they also said that the value of the sale was within 10% of the appraised value. So they referenced the appraised value. They said it was within 10%. That's what the solicitor had told us. And by doing that, I think that they lied. I think they didn't either have the right information or they didn't have the right knowledge as to what was supposed to be done.
Within 10% of the assessed value.
No, 10% of the appraised value is what was written in the minutes, right? So
I know what they wrote in the minutes, but it was actually 10%, within 10% of the assessed value.
Yeah, but the assessed value is not that's an assessment, not a value of the school itself. Your assessed value and your property value are two different things. And here's the evidence on page 45. Let me scroll down. This is when they were transcribing the minutes for us, which is nice. It gave them all their evidence for us to go after them. Page 45. I saw the numbers just like Kraus did, right? We're talking about the appraisals, right? Did you see the appraisals? And she said she saw the numbers. So appraisals and assessed values, I agree, Barb, are two different things. But I cannot foresee that this appraisal of those two schools, which we still do not have copies of them, they should have been retained, right? They're an official school record. Doesn't make sense. But Mr. Schwab said they were within 10%. And I think I have that in here somewhere.
That's because he paid for the appraisals. The school never did, so they don't have a record of it.
Right. So I called the guy that they hired to do the appraisals. And they don't exist anymore. And they were told, right? This is whisper down the lane. This is hearsay evidence. But they were told that they're no longer needed. Don't file them. Don't create them. Right?
The appraiser should. I'll have to find out.
Copy, right?
I wonder if the appraiser is required to retain them for a certain period of time.
We're working on that. We have to actually subpoena his records because here's where Schwab says in the minutes. Let me pull this one up. That it was on page, let me see, 67 here. Hold on a second. Let me just do it cheap here, 67. Here's where Schwab says, right? They're slightly lower, about 10%. And he's talking, Barb, about the appraisal numbers that we had, right? We're talking about appraisals, not assessed value, right? So he said it happens so rarely, it can't be accurate. Did these offers we have in the other two meet the appraisal numbers, right?
Yes.
And here he said
yes.
They were slightly lower, about 10% lower.
Correct.
And I said, that's our appraisal. And Schwab said, yes. So therefore, the appraisal exists. In someone's eyes, in someone's record somewhere, these appraisals occurred. Who paid for them, how they got paid for, they were done on the behalf of the owner of the property, which is the district. And that's where he said they were within 10%. And this is where he's now saying we may not get a bid in those other ranges that we're talking about for Franklin and Shell David that we do have the appraisals for. But it's just wrong. I mean, you shouldn't be selling a property. If you were a business, if you were a good steward of this asset, you would know how much it was prior to making a decision. And I think you neglected your duty to advertise the property. I'm sorry, I think the district neglected their duty to advertise it properly. And I think they're in defiance of where are we at here? This Palm versus Center Township back in 1980, where it's a requirement for the school board members to be informed. Now, the fact that they were not informed is irreprehensible. I mean, it's wrong.
Well, they kept lying and telling us. They kept lying and telling us that they were on LoopNet. Wasn't it LoopNet?
No, that's the other ones.
Zillow.
But yeah, but that's the other ones, and we agree. So that's the problem with the appraisals. The short, simple is they had a responsibility under the law to advertise them properly in this Carbon County Law Journal. They did not, and I believe that the district suffered from the sale value because of the lack of advertising and not getting an informed decision by the board. They got snowed, right? So since they got snowed, they should have just followed the law. Had they followed the law, it would be more difficult to snow an entire board. That's our argument to the court, right? They had a duty. It's defined as what the duty was. They neglected the duty, even so that they read the law because of all the other caveats within the law are perfectly addressed within the motion. That motion just neglects this part, which is the biggest part. Let's face it. I mean, if you advertise in the Carbon County Law Journal and that's being pinged by every real estate company knowing someone's selling a piece or an asset within the district, it should have added to our participants at the auction or at the hearing or whatever they wanted to do to sell those.
Yeah, they rushed the first two buildings because you guys won the election. That's all that came down to.
I agree. And they neglected the duty and they neglected their constituency by not following the law. And that's why we want them removed.
Yep.
Let's move to the next one.
And it's sad. There's another property out in 443. I refer to it as the old Dr. Diaz medical building, or his offices were out there. Probably a half a mile past Normal Square on the left. That was listed at like $750,000, and I thought would never sell for that kind of money. But I hear that there's a buyer on it.
Great. So basically, that's how this whole case goes, and I have the whole thing. We're gonna end this meeting because it was short and simple, just to show and prove to Rita that look, we have the evidence. It's all documented. It's all linked. It's all sitting here. For each and every area of neglect that we feel that they have missed within their duty, and that's why we want them removed.
You can't see that when you have Rita ism.
Yeah, I know. I understand. And it's a shame that Rita didn't attend. This file was provided to the defense counsel, and the defense counsel claimed immunity for a lot of this, which, again, they should not be immune from following the law. And there's a court case that we have on that one down here at the end. I'll get this whole thing out to you, Barb, so you can have it. And Wally and anyone else has participated, Terry. And I appreciate you attending the meeting. Is there anything else I can get for you guys?
Nope, I'm good.
Nope.
All right. So I'll get this out, and hopefully we'll get Rita's attention, and maybe she can stop neglecting the law. It would be
She
nice.
won't.
Good luck. All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate
Have a
you
good
coming
night.
to the meeting. See
Have a
you.
good night.
Right.